Welcome to Landlord Diaries, where we talk about midterm rentals and the opportunities behind them. We'll share landlord stories, talk about maximizing investment potential, and discuss how to live the very best landlord life. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Furnished Finder, the place for everything midterm rentals. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy our content.
It's your host, Kelly Bailey from the Austin, Texas area. As you can tell, it's not Katie today. We have...
Nope, not today. Brian Payne. I'm the co-founder of the company.
Awesome. Brian, what did you think about today's episode with Sarah?
I think it's a must watch or must listen because Sarah, she is incredible. Like what she has built is really inspiring. And for a landlord, you're looking at it and going, okay, it could get fairly daunting and overwhelming pretty quickly. But it seems like everything that she's been faced with, and you're going to face stuff as a landlord, she's got an answer for, right? So she's built these systems, she's professionalized herself and her processes, and she's really good at this stuff. So I would take a look if you're a landlord who is looking to scale or looking to professionalize, or maybe you're just considering the midterm rental space. I would recommend this podcast.
We have Sarah Weaver with us today, who is the co-author of a new book called 30-Day Stay. We heard from Ziana already on the first half of the book, and we'll be talking with Sarah today about the second half of the book. We at Furnished Finder are extremely excited about this book release as it's all about mastering the medium-term rental, and both ladies are Furnished Finder hosts. Sarah is a woman of many talents as an investor, speaker, author, and real estate consultant. Sarah leads worldwide group events for investors and offers one-on-one consulting sessions. If you don't know where to start when it comes to furnishing your midterm rental, then check out Sarah's company, Arya Design Services, to help you launch your 5-star furnished rental business. You can find the book for sale and connect with Sarah on her website, which is just her name, www.sarah.d, as in, what is your middle name?
Danger.
Oh, SarahDangerWeaver.com. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for being here today. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much for having me.
You are welcome. We're so excited to talk with you. And if anyone is watching rather than listening, you may have noticed Katie has changed a bit. She is now our CEO, Brian Payne. So we have a special guest today. Hi, Brian. How are you?
Hey guys, yeah, I know, cheap imitation. I'm not Katie Lyon, but I'm happy to fill in. Thank you for having me.
I'm sure our guests are going to be very excited to have you on the show today. So let's jump into the first question. Sarah, how did you get started in real estate? And tell us your story of how you ended up where you are today.
Absolutely. So I bought my first rental property when I was 27. This was in 2017. And it's interesting. There was not a specific moment where it was like, okay, I'm going to own real estate. I look back at my story when I take a 13,000 foot view and I realized there was always a whisper. So my dad works for a construction company and moved from blue collar to kind of a managerial position. But I basically grew up on job sites. So grew up playing on dirt piles. And so through osmosis, I know a lot about how to build a house. Yet had no desire to be a construction worker or work for a construction company. I actually went to school for journalism. I have a degree in international studies and a degree in journalism. I wanted to be an international journalist. And I did that. Really proud of my journalism resume. However, I realized really quickly that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there with jobs that they're like, I didn't quite know that was what this was, what I was signing up for, right? And I realized that I wanted two things in my life. I wanted freedom to travel and financial independence. And Freedom to travel was probably going to happen from journalism, but it was going to be where they told me to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so no journalist is getting a ton of assignments on the beaches of Bali or Brazil, which is where I wanted to go. And then definitely unless you have a wonderful face for camera and you get a really, really wonderful career in journalism, you're not going to make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I quickly realized that I wasn't going to make very much money or have freedom to travel. And so it was like, what should I do? And I've always had the gift of gab, or the ability to sell, but being a salesperson felt icky. I didn't know what I know now. I mean, I could have had a killer career in sales had I known what I know now. But again, it just was this whisper of real estate. I had met a real estate investor. I had met a few real estate agents. And I thought, I think I should try this.
That is so cool. I actually loved the story in the book about how you bought your first property in, I think it was Kansas, and your dad was there looking at it with you. Do you want to tell the audience your Kansas story?
Yeah, so it's kind of a bad cop, good cop story. But before any of the listeners think like, oh, this girl has it made, her dad's in construction, her dad helped her, I have been independent since I was 2. There's this great story of me getting dropped off at kindergarten and me looking at all the kids like crying because their parents are leaving and asking my mom, what's wrong with them? My mom's like, well, kid, they're sad to leave their parents. You're doing a happy dance. So I've been independent since before I even knew what that word meant. And what happened was I had spent years abroad at this point, and I picked up the phone and I called my dad and I said, hey, Dad, I think I want to buy a rental property. No one in my family owns property except for their primary. No one's a real estate investor. And frankly, I don't think they thought it was a very good idea, or they thought it was one of, Sarah's crazy ideas. So, but when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And so I drove from Denver to Kansas, actually to attend a wedding. And while my friends were pre-gaming for the wedding, I went and knocked on doors. And so for the savvy investors, they probably know what that means, driving for dollars, knocking on doors. But for inexperienced investors, what that meant was I was actually knocking on doors. Hi, my name's Sarah. Would you be interested in selling me your house? And I look back and I didn't know fear. I think it continues to be a theme in my life. I'm just not a very fearful person. I always think I can probably figure my way out of anything. And so that day was no different. So I went around and I knocked on doors. I did get very tired and lots of rejection, but I was also doing online dating at the time. So rejection was just common space. And when I found this house that I thought would be a good deal, I walked the property alone and I told them, I said, I really want to come back tomorrow. And I positioned myself in a way that I made it sound like I would need my dad's permission. But I think the audience and my family all knows that no, I knew exactly what I was doing. I just needed like a good cop, bad cop situation. So my dad came with me the next day and he had one job, and it was to point out everything wrong with the house in hopes that every time he pointed out something wrong, that's $500 or $1,000 or, I was trying to get money off the price. This was back in 2017 where it was possible to get seller concessions. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what we did. I actually had a printed out contract in my purse, which even in 2017 was like old school. Like most were doing electronic signing even then. But I had it printed out in my purse, and I sat down at their kitchen table with the sellers and they signed it.
That's awesome. Yeah, the book has a lot of fun details about that story. So that's your sneak peek. Brian, what would you like to ask Sarah?
Yeah, I would love to know, what is your what's your take on the midterm rental space now? You probably see it, have seen it grow over the years, and where do you see it going?
Absolutely. So what I love is I call it my investing cocktail. I like to combine 2 strategies, out of state investing with the medium-term rental strategy. The reason being is when you're open to buying anywhere in the country, you can buy places at a lower price point. I think, Brian, you live in Denver, Colorado, really expensive, right?
Right.
Prices are at the top of the market. It's hard to make the numbers work. It's exactly where I was living. I was living in Denver in 2017, and I was able to look over 10 hours to the east to Kansas and realize, oh, I can buy a really nice house for under 300,000 and then turn around and rent it. Long term, I could rent it for 2,000. So quick math, that's not hitting the 1% rule. But if I can rent it to traveling nurses or anyone looking for a furnished rental, then I can start to get closer to that 1% rule or renting it for 3,000. So that really is how I look at it, is I'm looking at how can I get a house for a price where the numbers make sense? And then how can I rent it out or maximize the property once I've acquired it?
Right.
And that's where the medium-term rental strategy came in.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, we were renting while we were living maybe here, our places were in California and Texas. So
Amazing.
You just go where you are. And what do you need? All we needed really was a cleaning crew, right? That you can trust and that has good communication, and a fix-it guy. And if you have those two things, and in your book, I think you describe a lot of this, but other than those two things, I mean, do you recommend anybody else need anything else to get started, or are those kind of the two core things that you need?
Yeah, I love that, because that's exactly how I look at real estate investing is let's do what I call just-in-time learning, and let's keep things as simple as possible. So you nailed it, Brian. Those are the two people you need. You need a handyman and you need a cleaner. And then you probably need a lot of backup cleaners and a lot of backup handymen.
Right.
But also worry about that when the time comes. So my biggest urge to real estate investors is you don't need a PhD in real estate investing in order to figure this stuff out. You just need to get started. And so those are the two things I start with.
I love
awesome. So I actually love how much you explain the numbers well, Sarah. You're really good at looking at a property and taking it and saying, okay, here's the pity, here's how it adds up, and here's how the numbers work out. Can you give our audience some of the examples of how lucrative the midterm strategy has been for you at times, and why that's your go-to strategy?
Absolutely. So I don't think that this property is in the book. So this is a good bonus content. So I picked up a duplex in March of this year. And the duplex, it's a 2-unit, up-down unit, 2-bedroom, 1 bath on the bottom, 2-bedroom, 1 bath up top. And it's located in Des Moines, Iowa. And it's downtown. It's in a B-, maybe even C+ neighborhood. So not the best neighborhood, but definitely safe, good neighborhood. Drivable, great distance to the hospitals or access to the hospitals. So picked up this duplex for 180. I believe it was 182,
wow,
if I remember correctly. Yes. So, and you guys, I found this through my investor-friendly agent. I think I was where would I have been in March? In March, I was in Merida, Mexico with friends, and I got this property texted to me, and I quickly analyzed it, loved the numbers, and I bought it. So the monthly payment, the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance is $884.
Lovely.
So it's my cheapest PITI across all my portfolio. And why I love this as an example is I inherited a long-term tenant in the bottom unit. They're amazing tenants. They're paying maybe $100 under market value. Otherwise, they're pretty much at market value. Great tenants. They pay on time. They're kind. So really excited about that. That doesn't always happen that way. Mm-hmm. And their rent is $850. So my monthly payment is $884, and I'm getting $850 from the bottom unit. So great property to what I call play with the medium-term rental strategy. So for me, I could have easily left it unfurnished and rented out the upstairs for $850, maybe even $950. I think $950 to $1,000 is probably market rent. But instead, I spent $5,600 furnishing the upstairs because I'm now an expert at furnishing on a budget. It's beautiful. You can see it listed on Furnish Finder in my profile. I think there's going to be a link, and I rent it for $1,900 a month. It's really good numbers.
Yeah, really good numbers.
And then I'm a really really conservative investor. I think that might surprise people. If you look at my Instagram, you'll see me jumping out of planes and flying to countries all over the world by myself. Mm-hmm. So while I'm a pretty risky person, mm-hmm. I'm a pretty risk adverse investor.
Okay.
I always saw it as I don't necessarily have a backup plan. I'm not married to a high income earner. My parents don't have money. I don't have like a big trust fund waiting for me. So I really need investing to work. And so if there's listeners out there that are thinking like, oh, she's so lucky. No, listen, I really needed investing to work because I didn't have another plan. Mm-hmm. I could always go back to journalism, but guess what? I was making $45,000 as a journalist. So not very sexy. And I really needed this to work. And so I love the medium-term rental strategy because I can pick up a duplex and I can be safe on one side and get what I call a sit it and forget it tenant, a long-term tenant. And then on the other side, I can use the medium-term rental strategy to get really increased cash flow. And you buy enough of these and you can kind of do anything that you want. You can choose to continue to work the job that you have, or you can pivot to a job that you enjoy more. Or if you replace your salary enough, you can just quit and retire.
Awesome.
Love that. So say that's your first unit. You get this duplex. How long do you think it would take for you to earn the down payment that you would need to do it again?
Yes, great question. It's going to definitely depend on where you buy. So when you told me that you own in California and Texas, immediately I went, ooh, that's fun because you have appreciation to play with. So what I encourage people to do is put on an asset manager hat when you own properties and analyze your portfolio every quarter and then really deep dive every 6 months and have a conversation with your board of directors. So that should be your CPA, your attorney, maybe any partners that you have, and decide, is this property doing the best for me and my goals at this time? So let's say that you bought something in Austin, which I think we all wish we bought something in Austin, and it appreciated 26% in a year. So then you can look at your property and you can say, okay, do I want to A, sell and take the equity and go buy something? Do I want to B, refinance, which you're not going to want to do in November of 2022 with the rates that they are. So then option 3 is you go get a line of credit or a HELOC if it's your primary, and you use that equity to then go buy more property. So that's basically creating your own bank for yourself. That's what I think every investor should be doing, is first looking at their portfolio, like, is this something I need to sell, refinance, or pull equity out of to then use to buy more? If that doesn't work because you bought in Des Moines, Iowa, and things are not appreciating at the speed that you need them to in order to do that, then you have to get creative. And you have to either, in my case, I went and found another way to make money, and then I'm saving all of that money. Or you go and you look for partnerships, which I've also done. And then your partner brings the money and you're the hustle partner. Those are really the 3 easiest ways to create funds for your next deal.
Wonderful. Awesome. Do you have a partner or do you just go in on certain deals with a partner?
Yeah, great question. So the latter. So yeah. I own 5 properties by myself. And then I own 3 properties with partners. They are all different partners. So I just brought a partner in on one property, brought a different partner in on a property, and then brought recently a third partner in on a property. And for those of you that feel like that's not for you, that's exactly what I felt like. I felt like, no one's going to want to partner with me, or this is really risky. I'm okay to lose my own money, but I don't want to lose their money. And then I really worked on my mindset and I realized, wait a minute, I'm bringing an opportunity to an investor. So actually the property that we just talked about, I have a partner on that deal. So for easy math, let's say that we're cash flowing $1,000 a month, which we're cash flowing more than that. But for easy math, we're cash flowing $1,000. She gets $500 a month and I get $500 a month. And she doesn't do anything. And she loves it. She actually asked for less updates the last time we spoke. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's my favorite partner.
Yeah, right.
If my other partners are listening, be like her because she's truly, and that's what I wanted. I wanted a silent partner because it's now my full-time job. I even have staff that help me with all this. This is what I do. Whereas other investors, they might want a partner to split some of the job with them. And I have really good friends, Haley and Kat, and that's what they do. They're partners, and one does acquisitions and one does dispositions. And that works really well for them. So partnerships can look like anything, and it's awesome.
Yeah. And not to go down too deep on the partnerships, but do you find these partners, did you know them ahead of time? Or did you find them on Bigger Pockets forum, or where did you go?
Yeah. So the first partner, she was in the right place at the right time. Our moms are actually best friends.
Nice.
And I had a deal fall into my lap that morning, and she happened to be over. And I looked at her and I thought, ooh, you have a job. Because I didn't have a W-2 at the time. And her and I got to talking, and I realized that it was a really good opportunity for her. She was just graduated and was having a wedding about 6 months later. So they really could use the extra money. And I love it because now her and her now husband are looking to go buy their first investment property on their own. And so for that partnership, there was a lot of heart involved. For the second partnership, I posted on Instagram.
Okay.
and just kind of put some feelers out there. And someone who knew me from undergrad reached out. I wouldn't necessarily say that we were friends. We were more acquaintances, but he loves to travel, and he was really impressed by my travels. And then he kept thinking, man, what does this girl do that she can travel and do real estate? So I piqued his interest by talking about the two things I do, real estate and travel. And then my third partner is someone that I had never met. I met her at a real estate event. She shared her goals. But then they didn't necessarily align with what she was needing. So for example, she said she wanted to own Airbnbs, but then in the same kind of breath, she said, I work actually really similar to you, Brian. She was in the sales devices, medical sales device field. Mm-hmm. And she was like, yeah, I earn a lot of money. I don't have a lot of time. I wish I had more time for myself and my health. And I thought, man, that is a perfect equity partner. She told me how much money she made. She told me how much money she had. And she basically said she didn't have time.
No time. Yeah.
And I thought,
that's the one thing I don't miss about that industry, I'll tell you, is that you do. It takes a lot. It takes a lot. So I empathize with her. But what a great partner. I love that. And obviously it's
partner.
aggressive.
If all my partners, she's my favorite partner.
Right. I love that. And I also love the fact that it gets you invested faster. You know, if you could do it on your own, and you could wait, and then you could wait for that down payment, and you could do it. You could organically just grow slowly, and there's nothing wrong with that. I like your approach as well because while it may be a little riskier, to bring on a partner, it will get you ultimately into the investment faster.
Well, it allowed me to take down great deals. Like the last 3 deals I bought are the best 3 deals I own. And it allowed me to take down deals while I was figuring out how I was going to become lendable again with conventional loans. I see. So for anyone listening that's switched from a W-2 to a 1099 or lost your job or whatever it is, there's this weird period where you don't have tax returns. Right. So you can't get conventional loans on your own. And so I fixed that problem by finding partners.
And do you find your partners ahead of time? Like, are you going in just sitting ready? Like, I've got 2-3 people right now that I could do a deal with. Or do you find the deal and then put it together?
Yeah, great question. I think if anyone's listening and they're wondering how to do this, it really is kind of a chicken and an egg. You don't want to go get a bunch of partners excited and then disappoint them by not having deals ready.
Good point.
So the deal's the hardest part to find. Like, I don't know who thinks it's the money. It's definitely the deal. So the deal's the hardest part. So what I recommend people do is they prime their audience. So maybe you send out an email or even just text messages. Hey, just a reminder, this is what I'm working on right now. don't be surprised when I call you and I ask for money. or I'm working on something and I might have an opportunity for you to make 9% on your money. Stay tuned. I think it would help you to prime your audience so that you don't just call them, because here's what happens is you call them and then they have 2 days to decide. And so that can be a little scary. But I don't think it's advantageous to go build a big database of partners, because if you get them excited about the idea of investing and then 3 months go by and you didn't bring them a deal, guess what? They're going to go find somebody else. So it's a little bit of a dance.
I like what you're saying there. Sometimes you just got to put it out there. It's like people get stuck in this mindset of, oh, I need a website first. I need all this first. I need my logo, and then I can go find partners. When really it's just a relationship. It's like everything we do is relationship building, and you just got to put yourself out there. So I think that was very well said. And partnerships is one of the chapters in the book. So buy the book. It will be in the link notes on audio and video version. So next, let's jump on to the next topic, which kind of brings it back to, I really like what y'all said in the book, that you have 11 reasons why MTRs, mid-term rentals or medium-term rentals, are so valuable. We talked with Ziana about 3 of those, so I'm going to give the other ones and let you pick which ones you want to talk about. So one, or ease, regulations, fewer expenses, fewer transactions, less competition, you set the rate, more flexible, and having a guest apartment. So what do you want to talk about from those 8 of the 11?
Yeah, I think less competition. So there's a lot of conversation around, Sarah, what about saturation? Is the market oversaturated? So let's tackle the hardest one first. So here's what I think about competition. If you are trying to get into the luxury Airbnb space in Phoenix, Arizona, absolutely, I think there's a lot of competition. And good luck buying a property at the current market price at the current interest rate. I just don't think you're going to be able to compete with someone who was able to pick up a property in 2019 and has years of experience managing it. I think that particular market is oversaturated for luxury Airbnbs. Now you take medium-term rentals, and when I first got started, there were plenty of listings in Omaha, Nebraska, which is where 7 of my 9 MTRs are. There were plenty of listings. I couldn't tell you how many they were, but all I did was I looked at my competition and I said, I know that I can furnish a unit more beautiful than this, and I can photograph it better. And so if you are in a market where there's not a lot of competition on Furnish Finder, that's where I would start. Because Airbnb, I do think, is very saturated with beautiful listings, but we're not seeing that on Furnish Finder. And that's a good thing, because it means that you can have a $250 coffee table book budget and hire a photographer for $175, and bam, your unit looks better than the other listings. And so the other thing you have to keep in mind as an investor is you don't need, like, when you go on your website, it's amazing. The furnishfinder.com/stats gives you amazing statistics about the area. And people are like, yeah, but there's, 94,000 inquiries. They're like, is that good? And it's so hard to tell anyone, yes, that's the number, or no, that's not the number. Because here's the thing, I only need 4 tenants a year.
Right.
So when I buy something, I'm like, can I have 4 tenants a year who pay me rent? The answer is almost always yes. And so I like the analogy, if you're running from a bear, you don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than your friend.
We a lot of times end up getting only 2 renters per year, or possibly 3, because a lot of people moving to the area that need to live somewhere while they're figuring out where they want to buy, And then, of
Yep.
course, the buying process takes some time. And then renovations at this time, there's a lot of people wanting to do big remodels that need a place to call home, and they don't want to be in a hotel while hotels are wonderful. For a long period of time for a family, that might not be a great fit. So that's what we see. What my husband and I see a lot in the Austin area is we don't even have four a lot of times throughout the year. We might have two.
I know. Isn't that nice?
Mhm.
Last year, so all of 2021, 47% of my MTRs extended to 6 months.
Really?
That's great.
When you
47.
get 47, and that was all in Omaha, which is a great market because you're near a great hospital complex.
Yeah.
And so they were all traveling nurses that extended their
Got it.
contracts.
Yeah, that was my question. What industry? So it sounds like primarily healthcare for you, at least in Omaha. We know that's kind of a hub for a lot of medical staffing companies and hospitals.
Awesome.
Yeah. So what about other types of travelers? Do you, or I mean, it sounds like you're very healthcare focused, but maybe you or the experience you had with Ziona, what other types of travelers are you seeing on Furnished Finder or just coming through your doors?
Yeah, what's great is that you see all sorts. So I have housed someone who was renovating their kitchen. And so I was smart and I made sure I blocked off the month after. They hadn't requested it, but I was like, yeah, your kitchen's not going to be
Right.
ready.
It's going to expect delays, right? Yeah.
And so when they sent me a message panic, I was like, don't panic. I planned for you didn't plan for this, but I planned for
That's
this.
fantastic.
So I've had that. I've had someone who lived in a town where they've just felt suffocated and they were like, I wanted to move to middle of America and try it. And I think she had family that lived there. And so she rented my apartment. She didn't extend her stay. That's odd. No. So she just wanted to try something different. I've housed someone has messaged me a little bit in a panic and said, I'm going through a divorce. I need to move out today.
Hmm.
I said, I got you. Don't worry. And so he wasn't able to move in that day, but he was able to move in like within 2 weeks. And so I think he stayed for 2 months, again, kind of just landing, figuring out what he's going to do next. I've had people come in town for internships, for other medical placements, so not just traveling
Sure.
nurses. And then I haven't had this in my unit, but I have a friend in Waco, Texas, Sylvia, and she rents to construction workers.
Okay.
So there's big commercial construction projects going on near her. So she houses them. And then I have a friend, Deanna, who owns in Kansas City, and she hasn't rented. There's no theme to her tenants. Like she's had a woman who just needed a furnished place for we don't know why. And then she had someone I believe he was in the insurance business. So there's like no traveling nurses have stayed in her unit. So
Interesting.
it really is going to depend.
Yeah, we are seeing a lot of that. You're seeing a lot of different types of travelers. It could be insurance. It could be simple relocation. It could be the family or the couple that are building a house and they're in between a remodel, like the person with the kitchen, and even traveling professors. Those med students. They're residents. They're living there for 6 months or a year while they're in residency.
Yep.
And again, get to know your area. When I was a landlord in Bakersfield, California, we had a lot of oil and we had a lot of ag. So, you had a lot of people that are coming in seasonally for those two industries. Definitely, you're the expert in your location, so know who's coming. A lot of times they're going to find you, but get an idea once you start seeing a particular type of traveler come through. Figure out how you can kind of market your property to other types as well. So it sounds like the average length of stay, because you were saying that 50 or almost 50% are renewing for an additional 3 months. So I would imagine that bumps up your average length of stay to, I don't know, 4 months or so, 5 months.
It does. Yep. I was at 90. I'm at 92 days across all 9 units.
Okay. Got you. Got you. Yeah, that's fantastic. And obviously, those 92 days, you need one tenant per year, right? So they're going to stay 3-4 months at a time, and then you have all that other time to travel. That's fantastic.
Exactly. And then we haven't touched on, I mean, the biggest demographic that we're seeing is digital nomads. I'm not housing any in Omaha, which is very weird. But I am an MTR user. Like, I will go and book a place for a month. So I've stayed in Ziana's apartment in Boulder, kind of while I was figuring out where I wanted to go next. So I've stayed there for a month. I've stayed in Austin for a month. I've stayed in Bali for a month. I've stayed in Portugal for a month. So even digital nomads are a good tenant source. There are actually 11 million digital nomads in the US alone.
Just in the US.
I love those facts because it's true. It's like you can work from anywhere with our technology world today. And so it's like, I think what we need to wrap it back to is if y'all would like to move on to the landlord logistics section, I think a lot of our audience is furnish finder landlords and those interested in being a midterm rental landlord. And so, everyone's fascinated by the idea that you can manage your properties from halfway around the world, but those that are doing it might end up thinking, how are you making that happen? I have a hard time leaving my city. So I really want to dive into that. One of those 11 reasons was the ease, is what y'all said. It's easy to take care of midterm rentals. And so let's jump into what that looks like. And I think the first thing that you talk about a lot in the book is investor-friendly agents. So why is investor-friendly agents such an important part of that process?
Yeah, so they start as your foundation of everyone you're going to meet. So as Brian mentioned, your two people that you need a handyman and a cleaning person. And then I put those on my what's called vendor list. And then your vendor list needs to grow. So then you need to have a plumber, then you need to have an electrician, then you need to have a window guy and a handyman. I call them a runner. You want someone that's a little less qualified to go over and like change the batteries of something. So you need a long list, what I call the vendor list, and that starts with your investor-friendly agent. First of all, I'm buying all of my property remotely, often sight unseen, and that starts with the investor-friendly agent. So even though I started out driving for dollars, door knocking, I don't want to do that anymore.
Right.
I have a life by design where in 2 weeks, I'm headed to Iceland, Amsterdam, and Guatemala. All in a month.
Fun.
And I'm really excited. I actually have not traveled somewhere new since March of 2020.
Oh, wow.
So very excited. Yeah, I know I'm always traveling. If anyone follows me on Instagram, they know that. But I haven't traveled somewhere new in a long time. So very excited about that. And I can do that because I built systems. So once you have the investor-friendly agent, you're going to start building out your vendor list. And then you need to kind of put what I call stopgaps in. So when a tenant has a problem with this is what the events that it triggers. So ideally you have them set up in a website like avail.co or apartments.com, and you've trained your tenants to send maintenance requests correctly. So they send maintenance requests, you're collecting money from them. When a maintenance request comes in, maybe even you have the message go to your handyman. That would be the most ideal. I don't. I have mine go to my executive assistant, and she then knows to go to the vendor list. And if it's an easy fix, she handles it without my involvement. If it does need my approval over a certain dollar amount, then she'll send me a message. Otherwise, it's all handled.
Okay.
I'm sure there's going to be listeners that are like, okay, that's great. Sarah has an executive assistant, but what do I do? You guys, if you don't have an assistant, you're the assistant. And it was like that for me for years. It's not until recently when I've hit 19 units that I've hired someone. Before I hired someone, it was all me. So I'll tell a really quick story. In January of this year, so 11 months ago, I was in the jungle in Guatemala, and I was on a hike, and of course was in airplane mode or, no service. And when I came out of the jungle, got on a tour bus back to where I was going, my phone turns on and that dreaded text message, like something's wrong.
Right.
And of course it was a furnace because it's January in Kansas. It happened to be one of my long-term units. And instead of panicking, I just went into solutions mode. Furnace is broken. Text my heating and cooling guy using Google Voice, which I have on my phone, even when I'm in Guatemala. Text the heating and cooling guy to the tenant for faster response. Take yourself out as the middleman, and then call and make sure that the heating and cooling guy has your credit card on file. So just immediately just go into solutions mode, and things are going to break. That's the joy of owning real estate. And so I think the biggest piece of advice is mindset. So yes, I could absolutely stay where my properties are and I could never leave, but that would be really missing the whole point. The whole point of me having this cash flow is so that I have the freedom to go on hikes in the jungle in Guatemala or buy a plane ticket to Iceland. And so you really have to decide, do you want to let the worry of out-of-state investing or remote investing overpower the ability to live the life that you want? Or are you going to like change your mindset? Because that's the only difference. That the only thing that's changed is mindset.
So let's talk about that mindset. You have an investor-friendly agent. You've built a vendor list. Well, you have to figure out how to, one, make sure you show appreciation like for your vendor team, and know, since we're in the hospitality business, we need to know that they're going to be able to be there quickly. So how do you navigate those relationships, since I would assume, that one example, that probably happens once every 10 years. So you don't have a ton of business you're sending them. So how do you build that relationship where you can rely on them?
Yeah, great question. So your handyman, you need to know what whiskey they drink, and you should be sending Christmas gifts
like that.
So I ask them. I ask them at the end of every service call, can I leave a Google review for you? Can I leave a testimonial for you? Do you want more business? Great. What's the best way for me to send you clients? And the great thing is that I have a database of investors. And so, but everyone has, for the most part, everyone has a Facebook or a mom's group or neighbors. And so find out what your vendor wants or needs and then give that to them.
Solutions.
Also pay them on time. Like when I get an invoice, I pay it. I have learned my mistake. I do pay a runner now to go check the work, because I used to just pay. And then, I paid someone to hook up a dishwasher. He didn't hook it up correctly. Guess what? When I tried to tell him, hey, you need to go back and hooked up directly, he's like, listen, I already got my money. Like, peace out. So I did learn the hard way that I now have someone go and check the work. I get photos and videos of everything. But everything can be done remotely. And the other thing you have to keep in mind is if I have to leave my house and I have to get to the airport, so I have to Uber to the airport, I have to wait at the airport, I have to fly there, I have to get a rental car, and then I go to the property, and then I inspect the counter. I don't actually know more about the counter than Daniel, my handyman. So I can save a whole lot of time and a whole lot of money by paying someone who's an expert in that to go over to the property and check it.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm reminded of my folks. They were Robin and Dwight, and they were he was the handyman and she was the cleaner, and she would actually go and shop and furnish the units as well. So we said, okay, here's the budget, and it was around, like you said, around $6,000 for usually a 1 to 2 bedroom place. And so she would go and, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? So yeah, photos, videos, all of the time. Love the runner idea to, for quality. It's that's the difficult part, obviously, but providing the systems that you have, I don't think it should detract anybody. Maybe a landlord who's just getting into it going, nah, that's not for me. I'm not going to, build that. It's just the natural progression of your success. So I don't think it should deter anybody. It should just be one of those things that you get to, and ultimately you're the recipient of and you benefit from that because you're essentially firing yourself and taking yourself out of the equation. Because what I've learned is that at some point, either you are the solution or you're in the way. Back to those investor-friendly real estate agents, I'm wondering, are they kind of going through and in their property identification process, are they kind of providing units that don't have an HOA? Or are they going through and kind of screening out the ones that are the HOAs that maybe are not investor friendly? And how do they do that?
Yeah, great question. So where I'm investing, I have not bought and don't plan on buying any condos or townhomes. It's not common in the markets that I'm in. And so avoiding HOAs is pretty easy because I'm looking at, duplexes and single family homes and residential neighborhoods. But exactly what you're saying is I'm putting together a deal criteria that's very specific. I don't necessarily go down to like what zip code or neighborhood I'm looking in because frankly, my agent is more of an expert in that than I am. But everything else is so specific that makes their job easier. I think when you text an agent and you tell them I'm looking for a good deal, they immediately think that's great, Kelly. Get in the back of the line.
So
Everybody's
everyone
looking for a good deal.
Right.
But if you text them and you say, hey, I'm looking for a duplex under $350,000, I'm open to B-class neighborhood up to $50,000 a renovation, and I am able to pay all cash or I have to use conventional financing, whatever it may be, that makes it so much easier for them. One thing I haven't done yet is I haven't had an agent where I've said, I will use the medium-term rental strategy and I want you to find me a property that's good for that strategy. It's always been just find me a deal and then Sarah, will figure out if it's a good MTR. I haven't put that on the agent, but I do think as this strategy gains popularity and more people are talking about it, agents will start looking at properties with the lens of MTR. There's an incredible agent in Kansas City. Her name is Maria Koch, and she is able to send me deals and say, hey, this would be a great MTR.
Nice.
And so, she's my favorite agent that I haven't closed a deal with yet. because she's thinking as an MTR investor.
I love that. And then, I'm just curious as to, okay, so she brings you the deal. It looks great, passes all of your systems and checks all your boxes. You own it. Now what? I know Arya Design Services is your company, and I think you outsource and help other landlords. Is that I guess maybe you could just start and tell us what is your approach, personally, how do you furnish a property for $5,500, and then what is kind of best practices there, and then maybe you could tell us a little bit about Arya Design.
Absolutely. Well, first thing first, we have to talk about inflation. I don't think that I can furnish a 2-bedroom for $5,500 anymore. And so inflation is real. It's hit every single item on our furnished list, including spoons. And so the reality is the days of being able to do that may be gone unless you're willing to go be scrappy and do Facebook Marketplace and thrift stores and all of that. But what I like to do is I like to make everything as plug and play as possible. So that's why I love the company that I started, Arya Design Services, is because we have a kind of a strategy for each investor. If you're an investor like I was that's scrappy and you want to do everything on your own, that's great. For $99, you should buy our furnished list. It will have every single item that you probably forgot to buy, like a strainer and a kettle and a spoon and the sheets that we recommend. It doesn't just say spoons and sheets and beds. It actually has a hyperlink to everything that we recommend. And I have touched or put together everything on that list. If a nightstand drove me crazy and it's impossible to put together, it's no longer on the list.
That's fantastic.
We will definitely be putting that in the show notes on YouTube. So guys, if you want that list, you want to buy it for $99, it will be in the notes.
Yeah, I'm interested as well. And I'm very curious as to how much of this requires me to be in Austin? Like
None. So, Brian, you could literally click, 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 add to cart, swipe your credit card, have everything shipped to the unit. And then if you can put together a team, which,
right.
you guys, a team doesn't have to be fancy. A team could be us. Arya Design Services does offer where we will fly there
Sure.
and put it together for you. That's our highest tier. But about 90% of our clients choose the middle tier. So the middle tier is not just by the furnished list, but we will actually curate the design for you. So we'll look at your space. I want measurements. If you have a floor plan, great. I want photos. I want videos. We're going to curate a specific design that's way beyond and more catered than the furnished list. Cater the design to customize the design to your unit, ship everything to the unit, and then you or someone you hire will install it. And it doesn't have to be really fancy. It can be one property manager or one struggling real estate agent that's willing to put it together.
Mm-hmm.
And then you or they can hire people on TaskRabbit to help them. I have hired people, not from TaskRabbit, but from people that I know, essentially like hourly handymen. And the three of us were able to put together a unit in 2.5 hours.
Wow.
That's impressive.
And granted, it was my 30th or 25th unit that
Right.
I'd ever put together. So I'm really good.
Right.
But it is possible to really do that. What's important that I tell you is that was weeks of planning.
Mm-hmm.
Which Arya Design Services would do for you. So what that meant is I had to, look at the photos of the property, all of the dimensions, curate a design, order all of the items, and then track all of the items and make sure that they actually got there on time. And then I knew exactly what nightstand was going with what bed frame, with what bedding, with what pillows, because that was all pre-prepped while I was under contract.
Mm-hmm.
So the beauty of this property is that I closed on it, and within 4 days it was being professionally photographed because it was completely furnished.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I love the idea, the practice rather, of professional photographs. Like, it always baffles me that somebody would go through, whether you own the property or not right now, or you're just acquiring it and you're spending all this time to furnish it. It baffles me that somebody's not willing to spend $150 or $200 to have a professional photographer come out, and they will always make it look better than you. Always. Your iPhone's great, but I mean, it's never going to do the job. It just simply can't. In a pinch, sure, you just want to get your listing up. Okay, over the weekend, it's fine. But work towards professional photographs. It's just a game changer. It's the icing on the cake. And it's like, why would you bake a cake and then not put icing on it? It's just, you're not going to get the results.
It not only affects the dollar amount that you can charge, it affects your occupancy rate, and it also affects the quality of tenant that you have. And then the other thing that you can do is you can hire a professional photographer. They're going to send the professional photos either to you, or if you hire us, they'll send them to us. And then Arya Design Services, we will write your listing description. We will get you listed on Furnish Finder. We will get you listed on any other sites that you're interested in. And we'll do all of that for you and give you all of your automated messaging so that you can truly be hands off, which I think a majority of real estate investors are coming to me and they're saying, I want to invest in real estate because I want to spend more time with my wife and kids, not less.
Right.
But yet they're flying there, they're going to Home Depot, they're sitting up at night writing the listing description, and they're so unwilling to pay for these things until round two. You know how many, I call them round two investors. They're like, oh my God, I never want to put a nightstand together or a bed frame together ever again. I will gladly hire you. And so my advice to investors is hire out what you can.
Right.
I like the two takeaways from this conversation. One, call Arya Design Services if you want it to be, more hands-off. Definitely worth the investment. And two, if you've been thinking about it, now's the time. Book those professional photos. I know you're thinking about it. So let's go ahead and Furnish Finder landlords, let's get those professional photos done and looking beautiful on the site.
Exactly.
All right, let's jump into the next conversation, which would be, this whole section, the landlord logistics, we're focusing around how to keep it hands off, because that's your specialty, Sarah. And you can furnish a property from New Zealand or take requests about something that's broken from Mexico, so really that's what I want to hone in on this episode with you is one of the things that the book covers is how many apps are available. And y'all reference so many different apps that really help you streamline your MTR process. And that's each step along the way.
Yeah. So I think the first thing you have to do is you have to put yourself in the shoes of the tenant. And what are the 3 things that they want to know right away? They want to know, how do I get to the unit? How do I get into the unit? And what's the Wi-Fi password? Those are the 3 things. And as long as you answer those really clearly, you should not hear from the tenant in the first 24 hours. Then when they get into the unit, they're likely going to want to figure out, how do I heat or cool this thing? Because maybe it's not set to the temperature that they want, or the weather's starting to change. And again, I don't want them to message me. Or more importantly, I want their experience to be very nice and I don't want to hear from them. So you want to have things in place to make it really easy. So all of those are in automated messaging. So you get a message that says, this is how you get in, and you make it so dummy proof that there's no way that they can't figure out how to get there. And some units are confusing. My own unit is confusing. I have 2 doors that are both considered unit 2. They're right next door to each other. One's technically, this address and the other one's this address, but it is a little confusing. So I make it so crystal clear. If you are looking at the back of the building, it is the top right. When you walk up the stairs, the door is on the right so that there's no way that they can be confused.
Right.
And so you make everything really clear. And so that starts with your automated messaging. And I anticipate their needs before they have them. So I use a program called Hospitable.
Okay.
Their competitor would be something like Guesty or Owner Res. I use Hospitable, and it allows me to send the messages at certain times. So before they can even wonder, how do I get there? Because they're checking in, tomorrow, let's say, they're getting a message. Then right before they're supposed to check in, here's the entry number to get into the keypad. Everything's automated and everything's sent there. Then I go a step further and I send a message that says, I hope you had a really great stay. If you're hungry, I highly recommend this cute little bistro down the corner. I also recommend to order this at the bistro. It creates a really nice feel. It makes them think, wow, this is like really good customer service. And also think about it. When you go somewhere, you're tired. You didn't go to the grocery store. You wake up tired and hungry or in need of coffee. And so let me make that easier for you and send you where I would go if I stayed there. And that's where I really think that I start to stand out as the landlord. And you have to keep in mind that your tenants are people. Mm-hmm. And they're not out to get you. They're not out to break stuff. They're not out to not pay you. They really are wanting a great, safe place to stay. And so as a landlord, you have to make sure that you do that for them.
Mm-hmm. You and Ziana specifically note that you mainly advertise on Furnish Finder, Airbnb, and on VRBO as well. So with that automated messaging, do you set it up where you have different messages depending on what platform? Like let's take the review, for example. Well, if it's an automated message that you're sending out to leave a review, it's gonna be a different process on Airbnb than it would be on Furnish Finder. So are you able to use the Hospitable program to kind of set it up per site, or is it just one generic message?
Yeah, great question. So what's great is it does automate with Airbnb and I believe VRBO. Mm-hmm. Ziana's properties are on VRBO because she's in specific locations that are great for that. Mm-hmm. My properties are just on Furnish Finder and Airbnb. And so when I have them set up on Hospitable, we're manually taking the tenant from Furnish Finder and putting them into Hospitable. And in doing so, they get set up on a different sequence. Okay. So you're exactly right. Their messages are a little bit different toward the end when it comes time to leave a review, or anything tied to like automatic payments, but otherwise the messages are all the same. And they're getting messages like, for example, they're getting messages like reminders about trash and recycling. They're also getting a nice polite urge that we would like them to hire our cleaner so that the unit is cleaned during the stay. So they're sent our cleaner's information if they want an additional clean during their stay. Just certain messages are sent out throughout time. And then we also have notifications to us anytime, a reservation's changed or a cleaning is coming up. There's messages to my team, my executive assistant, as well as my cleaners.
Awesome.
I think this is amazing, and it really shows that a landlord, like, you do this by yourself. Yes, you have partners, but you're the main person in your organization, and yet you're able to do it all without property managers, right? Because they take 30-40%, and people go, well, I can't do it without a property manager. Yes, you can. And it just to see how one person has built and is building, an empire of mid-term and short-term rentals is amazing. And clearly, in order to do it, in order to be successful, you have to professionalize. And I'm just so impressed with your systems, and not only on the back end of managing maintenance requests and things, but also on the front end of making the tenant stay an enjoyable one and anticipating their needs. So just congratulations. Very inspiring.
Thank you. And a lot of this, I've just figured it out along the way.
Oh yeah. That's what we do, right?
I think I realized really quickly, well, even let's take the story I shared where, 10, 11 months ago, I was doing this by myself. And I still was able, I think I was only on airplane mode for a few hours that day. But now in 2 weeks, my goal is to be on airplane mode for 5 days. I'm going to Iceland. I'm going to be out actually on the ice we're in search of the Northern Lights.
Ooh.
And my goal is to completely unplug. And that wouldn't be possible if I didn't learn to put systems and processes together and hire a great team that I trust.
Mm-hmm.
And if I come off the ice and, things are broken and things happened, it just is what it is.
So the funny thing is, I'm going to give you a little background. I work off questions that I create, and I think I wrote down 50 questions for you, Sarah, knowing that I wouldn't be able to answer or get all of them answered today.
I love it. I love how prepared you've been. Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome. So the fun thing is, we're advertising the book here today, and so 30-day stay. Some things that we didn't get to talk about in this section that you can look forward to in the book are how to your cleaner is your MVP. So how to interview and maximize choosing the right cleaner. It also talks about how to choose a top-notch management company and what questions to ask them to find the right one if you don't want to do it yourself and you really do want to be hands-off. And then I think the last thing I'll ask just for a quick answer is the book notes about automated pricing tools, how that can actually help increase your revenue by up to 40%. And that's probably a lot of time combining the STR and MTR strategy, which many of our landlords do. So what are some of those pricing softwares that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think the two competitors that I've seen most use is Pricing Labs and Dynamic Pricing.
Okay.
And that can really help you understand your market as it changes through the season. So using Ziana's property as an example, it might be able to be rented for $2,400 during the winter, but then in the summer peak months, she can get $3,000 or even $4,000.
Okay.
And so pretty incredible what's happening there. And then as far as finding cleaners, the reality is that no one's going to be perfect. And so I have gone through a handful of cleaners and a handful of handymen. And so I don't have some secret ingredient that you guys don't have. I'm so sorry, audience. I wish that I could come on and say, I found the missing piece. But the reality is that you just have to realize what's most important to you. And what do they always say? It's quality, speed, and price. And so you kind of have to choose two and sacrifice the other. And so it's really up to you as an investor which two are most important to you.
Nice. And I think y'all recommend Google searching vacation rental cleaning services, or I know I hear the turnover B&B talked about as well. So those are just some ideas there. So we will transition to our last section, Furnish Finder favorites and key check. So what has been like the main value of only having to advertise on Furnish Finder and Airbnb? What has been the main value of Furnish Finder for you?
Yeah, it's the quality of tenants. The quality of tenants that come through Furnish Finder is really unmatched. They know exactly what they're looking for. They are used to the process of, moving into KeyCheck or whatever the system you use. And so their response time is fantastic. And just the ease. And so for a long time, I was getting all of my tenants from Furnish Finder, and it just made everything so easy. And so I get asked a lot is, Sarah, do you have a direct booking site? And the answer is no. Like, I want easy. Some could call it lazy. Like, yeah, if you want to call me lazy, go for it, because I just want something that works. And listing my units on Furnish Finder has resulted in 97% occupancy across all my units. And 4 of my units are at 100% occupancy. I haven't had a single day of vacancy in 4 of my 9 units.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yep, that's a
Thank you.
huge win. Congratulations. And part of professionalizing is the system of onboarding each new tenant. Are you screening all of these new tenants?
So everything is automated through Furnish Finder. I have an automated message that tells them exactly what to do. That message is telling them to send me proof of employment, a reference, and their driver's license. And then my executive assistant is doing the reference check now. It, of course, was me before that, doing that reference check. And then if you're going to do any type of criminal or background check, then you can use great things like KeyCheck or apartments.com or Avail. Those systems all have things in place for you. What I like about the traveling nurses is I usually skip on the criminal background check because we know that they're very heavily screened because they're working in the hospital system.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And now what about bankruptcies or judgments, liens, evictions, credit scores? Are those important or no?
They are when they're not a traveling nurse. I'm catching those. When they are a traveling nurse, I'm not putting them through a background check. So far, knock on wood, that hasn't been a problem. Probably the moment that it does become a problem, then I'll use an extensive checking system.
How many,
like KeyCheck that you have?
How many travel nurses have you hosted to date?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I'm at 949, probably at 45 to 60.
Wow.
Awesome.
Is my rough estimate. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Good, and so far they've been great. I can tell you the one that wasn't great, and it had nothing to do with any criminal background check. She was a treat.
Yeah, you do it long enough, right?
I think. Well, that's what I think is, how good is that? A lot of podcasts, we spend the whole podcast talking about that one tenant. But man, let's say it was 40. 1 out of 40, that's some really good odds, right?
Right. And it didn't end in eviction, right?
Exactly.
Oh, it did.
No.
Oh, it did not.
No, exactly. No, I've never had an eviction with any of my MTRs, and I've only heard of I call it a legend. Whereas I've never heard of any investor having to do an eviction with an MTR tenant.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the risks with the.
I've done an eviction with a long-term tenant.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say that's one of the risks with the traditional focus of 12-month lease is that maybe a squatter or an eviction as well. But in midterm rentals, everybody I've spoken to, they haven't experienced one personally.
That's the great thing about Furnished Finder Travelers is it's a shorter stay. They view it as your property that they have a privilege to stay in, and they want that deposit back. So it's really great tenant pool for the midterm strategy, and we're really grateful for every one of our Furnished Finder travelers. Sarah, anything to add to that?
No, I just think that when you run a business long enough, things are going to happen. And so, again, kind of going back to the mindset piece, you just have to really realize that this is a business. Mm-hmm. And so, if you're treating every broken plate like that's going to create a bad day for you, mm-hmm. then you either have two decisions: either don't be a real estate investor or work on your mindset.
Mm-hmm. Leases. So chapter 15 is funny because one of the first things it says is we don't really complain about anything MTR related, but if we could, it would be about leases. And so I did want to add in for you and Ziana, I'm sure that y'all have streamlined your process and it's not as tedious for you anymore. But if you haven't tried the Furnished Finder Lease Partner Law Depot, like the book was saying, it kind of, it could take hours or maybe, I don't remember, 30 minutes. I think that's what it referenced. And KeyCheck partner with Law Depot. What's really great is you can save your leases per house. So after you have that first lease saved for that specific house, if you have different, if you need different wording in your leases based off the property, then next time all you have to do is pull up that save lease, edit the details, and then shoot it over in whatever e-signature program that you use. And so like for Law Depot, it really could be like a 5 to 10 minute process just to kind of.
All right, Kelly,
I
want you to time it. I want you to time it next time.
Because it's probably not 5-10 minutes, is it?
I've timed myself and I've timed my assistant, and it doesn't take 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to time
it. However, that's why I love this strategy is we're doing it 2, 3, or 4 times a year.
Yeah.
So like, even if it does take 45 minutes, like who cares? Mm-hmm. Because it's only taking you, less than an hour to create a really great source of income. But yeah, get back to me. I want to hear I want to see you time.
I'll have to do that.
Yeah. When we were doing it was always like, I don't know if you guys did this, but we worked off one lease, and then and you hosted say 40 to 60 travelers. We hosted probably 100 or 200 over the years. And it was very similar. It was like I would take that one lease and I would adjust it for that one tenant. And then I would take that lease and then I would adjust it for the next tenant. And then I would take that. And then at some point I'm going, I don't even know if the body of the legal version of the lease is, because I've edited it so many times. So yeah, the approach on KeyCheck is that, hey, you're guaranteed to have a state-specific lease with all of the updated wording, so you are protected, your traveler is protected, without wondering, is my lease still good? I got it in 2016. I'm still using it. I've changed it, 400 times since then. Is it still valid? But yeah, it's a good approach for sure.
Well, Brian, do you have any final questions for Furnished Finder favorites for Sarah?
Any other tips for onboarding? How do you make it quick and easy? And then what do you do with your listing, your Furnished Finder listing, while you're considering a specific tenant?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I keep my listing open until it's said and done. You never want to, put the cart before the horse or do the touchdown dance before you've actually crossed the finish line. And so I keep my listing live. Also, I have so many units in one area that if that one listing isn't a good fit for the tenant, then they can usually be plugged in for the next opening, which is the nice thing about owning multiple MTRs in the same area. And so when I'm screening tenants, I'm typically screening tenants for 3 units at a time. And then as far as making it automated, I think anytime you get a question, it means that your system is not good enough. So if they're asking, like, where do I send my rent money? Then it wasn't clear enough in the email. If they're asking how to use the remote, then it wasn't clear enough in the house manual. So every time you get a question, you should be putting that aside. Usually you get the question at the worst time, so you don't have time to like stop and ramp up your system then. But every time I get a question, it goes into a Google Doc. And then when I make time to improve my systems, I go into that Google Doc and I'm looking, okay, this person did have trouble, for example, getting into the unit with the two twos, right? It was very confusing. And it wasn't well lit. So guess what we did? We bought a sensor light. And so constantly be thinking about how can you improve this? I'll never forget a friend of mine, Nina. She was like, yeah, but they're always asking me like they can't see the house number. And I just kind of looked at her. I'm like, what would you do if you couldn't see your house number? She was like, oh, solution. Yeah, you're right. And so she bought a light for it and then bought lights, lighting up her driveway. And it doesn't have to be a really expensive solution, but now she's not getting that message anymore. And it also makes it safe. Like, I'm very big on safety as a solo female traveler. And a lot of these traveling nurses are coming in and out late at night or early in the morning. Safety is a really, really big thing for me. And so I'm always thinking, like, how would I want to walk into the unit? And so that's really important.
Yeah.
I think like this whole episode has been summed up really well in the fact that you're building systems to help build relationships and solve problems. Because while we are landlords and property owners, at the end of the day, we're in the hospitality business with midterm rentals. And really it's about that, making sure that they feel comfortable and at home and have everything that they need. And you've really summarized well how to make that happen for your guests. And I think that our listeners will gain even more about that from the book. So Sarah, we just really appreciate you being here. And how are the book sales going? It's December 6th is the release date, right?
Yes. So really, really excited. We are in pre-order right now. The pre-order link is live, and your listeners, they can order the book at biggerpockets.com/30-day stay. And they can use either one of our names. They can use Ziana or Sarah for 10% off. So definitely any listeners, really encourage you to buy the book. And a lot of people have. So last week we had a meeting with publishing, and we still have about 10 days left of pre-order as far as from the Bigger Pockets website, and we have sold 1,200 copies.
Wow.
And so
congratulations.
Yeah,
that's so exciting.
Congrats.
Thank you. It's really, really exciting. I knew people wanted to talk about this because it's all of the DMs I get on Instagram are, what do you think about this? What do I do about this? How do I do this? And so obviously Furnished Finder comes up a lot in my DMs answers, and it comes up a lot in the book because Furnished Finder continues to be a really great resource for us real estate investors.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, congratulations on your success. Congratulations on your book. Thank you for spending time with us and with other landlords. They're wondering what the magic button is. And they're saying, well, it may not necessarily be a magic button, but there are many steps along the way to, create a successful midterm rental real estate business. And thank you very much for sharing. And obviously in a short podcast, you can't touch everything. So go get the book.
Yes, please pick up the book and then reach out to me. I love hearing from listeners. I really do read and check all of my DMs. So if you want, you can message me on Instagram at Sarah D. Weaver, or you can go to my website, sarahdweaver.com. I really like hearing from you guys because I've now turned around and created programs and systems and even businesses that serve the real estate investor community because I really think we're onto something.
Agreed. Well, thanks everyone for being here for another great episode. Until next time, share this episode with a friend.